Okay, so I'd like to share like this really interesting thing that happened this summer, because I was working with a group of teachers and trying to like teach them the whole re-engagement process, and I kept saying, we need to plan questions based on student thinking that you saw. And they kept wanting to go off with a new problem, with, a new this, a new that, and changing. I go, no, let's just kind of trust the process and let's go use the actual student responses. So then when we finally got, and it was hard for me because I'm not very good at being so directed, but I kept going in and stopping their thinking and go, no, you really have to use student thinking for this particular lesson. And then we got in the classroom, and then they came back and they go, oh, the mathematics was completely different than what we thought it was. Once we used the student thinking and could hear what they were saying, we realized that it was just about a whole different topic than where we were at. So that was really fun.
I think a very valuable part of the process is sitting down with the teachers and pulling out the essential mathematics, and not just to, it may be a chance to have teachers examine their own lack of content knowledge or their own misconceptions, but beyond that, to just say, to have this conversation, what is it that this task is really asking students to do? And in their answers, what was it that we really need to focus on? And I think that's maybe what you were getting at a little bit, but that was a very rich discussion that we had, and that took a large part of the time that we used for planning. Was what is the learning goal for this task? And it's not always clear. You can read what's at the top of the task. It says this task will give you a chance to, in this case, use area and perimeter, but that's such a big topic. So what did students really need to understand? And then that helped us frame our questions about justification. And what level of understanding are we looking for here, and how do we get that level of understanding? So and after that, the lesson kind of wrote itself in a way.
It does,
Not that it wasn't an important part, but doing all that work thinking about what is it that we really want to do here helped make the rest of the work much easier.
I think an issue about helping teachers where it may not come as easily to them, or they may not be as open, perhaps, that I think the issue, and I think it's a really good point both of you have talked about, the idea of looking at a lesson, a task, a question, what is the mathematical purpose and focus, and thinking about the questions that you would pose to students in order to get at that mathematical goal, purpose, and the deep understanding. But then realizing that it's through discussion, it's through the wait time, it's through the partner talk, it's through whole group processing of those prompts that allows access for all the students, and not just, Charlie raises his hand and says the answer is, and then the teacher goes, great, Charlie said it out loud, we know the answer, we can move on. So I think in working with our team at our school, we have some teachers who are taking off, and we have others that, well, as long as Charlie says it, then we can move on because somebody said in the class and they verbalized it, and good, we've got it. So just having them observe, have conversations, discussions around that wait time and around the purpose of letting all students talk with each other and with the whole class, and to come to an understanding so that they can deepen their own mathematics and move the class along, has been really, really important in the group that we're working with, and with teachers who are struggling with that shift.
Yeah, so like we did a lesson study around this idea up in Pacifica last week, and so the teacher observers were talking about how the person teaching the lesson never said whether an answer was right or wrong. They just kept letting the class discuss it. And they were talking about how that really opened up the conversation to where people really then trusted the mathematics to lead them to the right answer, whereas it's so easy to go, oh yeah, you're right, maybe you need to rethink about that, I'll get back to you later. So it allows it to be safe to have errors on the board and to have errors in the conversation, and then see that kids eventually, correct those.
And having those teachers observe that happening is so incredibly powerful and important. And
It
so
is.
that's where I think the observation of the lesson study or watching the re-engagement lesson and conversations around that is helping to move some of our more reticent teachers.
Yeah, and I think it's like you can read in textbooks, the importance of having errors in the classroom, but we're all such good nurturers that we don't know how to make that safe. And so this process sort of shows teachers how to make it safe to have those errors up for class discussion, because like you were saying, kids stop thinking about, oh, this was how I did it, and they're just looking at the answer.
For me, I see the most important part of my role as a coach is to support the teachers. Just like we want the students to understand the mathematics and talk about the mathematics, because that's really how they build the understanding. We want the teachers to take over. We can set up all the different learning situations for them, but I don't want it to be coming from me. I want them to be talking about the work. I want them to be learning from each other. I want them to be creating the lessons, talking about it, designing it. Even when it comes to looking at the videotape of the lesson that we just looked at, that Fran had done, there was so much learning that went on just in our conversations around that lesson of what worked well, what you might be doing differently. Oh, I didn't understand that was what was happening. I didn't, it was so interesting to hear all those different student conversations that you don't get to hear and understand when you're in front of the class. So all of these different opportunities that we give teachers helps them own the work, as long as it is the teachers themselves that are doing the discussion and the planning, and ultimately understanding that the process is always going to be a work in progress, that we are always continuing to create better instruction for our students, and so we're always learning. It'll never be done.
No, absolutely. No.